Back from our lunch break. It is July 17th, 2023. We are continuing with the Board of County Commissioners Budget Workshop meeting. We have been working our way through, alphabetically through the county's departments, and we are currently up to library, and
Like
it'll...
that, don't you, the alphabetically thing?
Yeah, I was going to actually randomize it, but then I figured that might be too much trouble. But keeps people on their toes. The library budget will be presented by Miss Jennifer Salas.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jen Salas, Library Director. We are requesting a few increases this year for a 4.66% change over this previous fiscal year. One of the reasons for that is to increase our contractual services, which is our frontline part-time staff, to get them up to the new minimum wage requirements that'll be implemented next year. A few laptop computers for our lead library specialists, as they don't have dedicated workstations at this time. And then also just the typical vendor increase for our collection vendors for print books and other library materials. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, Ms. Salas, Mr. Donaldson mentioned this morning that there's a staffing shortage due to,
So we are struggling to recruit our part-time frontline staff due to the minimum wage requirement. Like, we haven't met that for the $15 an hour yet. So unfortunately, we are kind of in line with paying those staff with fast food restaurants and other things that don't expect as much training and effort. So yes, we are struggling to recruit.
why are we not meeting the minimum wage requirement?
It's a future thing, so it doesn't get implemented until, I think, 2025. So we're just getting ourselves up to that point. So that's why the request is in this.
Well, if we're having to close down libraries early because of a requirement that we don't have to meet for another year and a half, it's probably wise to consider
Meeting.
beating that requirement.
So what's in our current budget request for FY24 will get us there.
Okay, good. Move approval.
Thank you. It'll just put you on par back with the fast food restaurants, not ahead.
Pretty much.
Thank you.
Not when McDonald's is $20 an hour.
How much?
20.
We have a motion to tentatively approve the library budget by Commissioner Hurd, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next department is Parks and Recreation. It'll be presented by Mr. Kevin Abate. Mr.
Good
Abate, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Board. Kevin Abate, Parks and Recreation Director. This year's budget focuses on three areas. The first area is the new park, Palm City Place, funding for Palm City Place. The second area is just doing the cost of business in parks, FP&L increases, general maintenance increases. And the third area, which is the largest increase, are the increases in our anticipated revenues for the Parks Department. And I can explain that in a little bit. We do have our four goals listed on the slide presentation, are actually our master plan goals. We're still abide by them since 2014, which our focus is now is to maintain and improve our facilities, existing facilities and amenities, improve our financial opportunities, and continue to improve our program service delivery, and of course, organizational efficiencies. That's pretty much what we do in parks. What we've been able to do this year, as Mr. Donaldson alluded to earlier in the day, is that we're able to reduce some of our impact on using tax dollars and getting like the golf course off its subsidy. And for example, I ran the numbers for the golf course this morning, and the golf course current net revenue is $375,000. We look at all the revenue-producing assets right now for the Parks Department. We are currently at a net $1.436 million. We collect with all of our park fees through the department. We're just a niche below $6.9 million in total revenue collections. It helps offset a lot of things and allows us to do some good things in the Parks Department, like improving our services. So overall, the Parks Department is doing well in a financial position, and we expect that to continue. And so we opened up more assets like the mooring field in Port Salerno, get our power pedestals for Phipps Park. We'll do a little bit better. So so I have any questions that you may have I can answer for you. I'm happy to.
Were you going to show us that screen, or was there another screen you were going to show us? Or are you just going to explain it to us?
Well, I was just mentioning to you some of the assets that we have revenue-wise that are doing well, which is every single one of our assets, meaning the water park, the golf course, the campground, the 2 cafes. All those right now, as of this morning, are trending well. They're all positive revenue in the tune of $1.43 million. That was kind of the nexus of the conversation. That's why we're able to kind of keep our budget flat. We need the increase in revenue because we're spending more money, but it allows us to have a budget reservation. For example, if the campground nets $500,000, which it will do this year, that has to be shown in a zero balance budget. It has to shown as that as an expense, but it's actually as a reservation in the line item. Correct?
Correct.
So we show the revenue as an expense and a budget reservation to be used for future years to offset your budget, which is a good thing.
Commissioner Smith.
Just a general comment. Every time I think about this, and from when I first started doing this to where we are today, our Parks Department is a dramatically different Parks Department, and that's a great thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing, and it's remarkable that you can come and tell us what you just told us, because sometimes we are critiqued as to how we spend and what we spend, and our projects, your projects, are doing really, really well, and they continue to produce, and it's fantastic.
And I appreciate the comment. One of the things that you see on the slide, you see Music at the Mansion, monthly series, free to the public, senior services, after-school programs. We have so many other things that we do aside from these facilities that generate revenue that are all impacting the community. And the Parks Department, my entire team has done such an amazing job in my 13 years here as the director. And I just tell you, we just continue to get better and better each year, and it's amazing. Yeah, 13 years, I can't believe it.
Anyway, I'd move tentative approval.
Commissioner Heatherington.
Based on the example that you had given on Phipps Park, the revenue generated in Phipps Park, does it stay in with Phipps Park, or does it, at the end of the year, new budget year, go into a general parks fund?
It stays in an account tagged for Phipps Park as an activity code. So, if we need to plug a budget hole in the future year, we need to spend money on something beyond the budget, we can dip into that budget reservation if we need to for that specific site. So Phipps has its own budget reservation, so does Seaside and the water park. And so we've been accumulating dollars for those projects year after year in case we need to plug some budget holes down the road. And so far, we've been pretty fortunate not to have to dip into those.
So there's certain funds, like you just described, Seaside Cafe, Phipps, then the golf course hitting bays.
There's
Those
that.
are
The mooring fields.
the mooring fields that are, what did you call them the other day? Enterprise?
They're special revenue funds.
Special revenue funds. So, but for instance, Phipps, you can reinvest it, but you could take that if we needed it in general parks, right? It's not restricted
No,
in
it's
the
not.
sense.
I believe that the position that I'm trying to achieve over the last decade is to build these funds up and as rainy day funds in case if something happens. If we have, for example, this year with the water park, we've had some horrible weather. We just broke even over the weekend. As we move into the next 20 days of summer, sunshine, the sun is our marketing plan. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So like with any event, we're saving for the rainy day.
But the special revenue funds would be restricted, right?
Yes.
Those would be actually restricted.
Yes.
Thank you.
Don Donaldson.
No, I think the question was answered, and the fact is that the board has the ability to move those funds if necessary. However, the practice has been is to leave them in the Parks Department to generate enough revenue to cover any potential downfall, so we don't have to subsidize those areas.
Very nice. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith for tentative approval of the Parks and Recreation budget, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next department is Public Works, and will be presented by Mr. Jim Gordon and Mr. George Zama. Mr. Gordon, good afternoon and welcome.
Jim Gordon, Public Works Director. So with this year's budget, we are requesting a change of 10.87%, and it involves largely cost for electricity and service contract changes. So the service contracts are starting to come back, 30% higher than where they were in past years, especially for labor-related type things. And then we have two FTEs, so two new FTE requests. One is a chief project manager for vertical construction, and the reason we want to do that, currently we're contracting that out. But we have a number of large vertical projects coming up in the next couple of years. So we've got the public safety training facility that we're working on now. We've got the burn building coming behind that, the clinic, and then, of course, the operations facility. So we'd like to maintain continuity through that program by having an FTE for vertical construction. And then the other one is for an engineering compliance coordinator for our development review engineering services program. So we did an analysis of the number of employees that we have reviewing applications versus what growth management has, and clearly there's a void there where we could have more staff, and then we wouldn't be the delay, because at times we've fallen behind growth management in our review time, and this thought is that we could be more in line with what they're doing and get things reviewed in the same timeline. So with that, do you have any questions about the budget?
Yes, we do. Commissioner Heatherington.
Questions on the FTEs. So the first one, the chief vertical construction management, in concept, I agree that we need someone to be a project manager on those. Now, if we are to explore the construction management at risk, wouldn't that in itself, there's some management potential in exploring that idea?
Here he comes.
George Zama, Public Works Deputy Director. So we would still need oversight from the county's perspective, just documentation-wise and protecting our contract. We would need a separate contract with the construction manager at risk. So there is oversight still needed. We also met with other counties that facilitate that type of delivery method, and they still have project managers that oversee all their vertical contracts.
So who's overseeing the vertical contracts now? A mix of, or you're it?
No, fortunately, we have a contract employee that's working with us, has 40-plus years of vertical construction background. That's been a huge, huge assistance to me and our staff, the county as a whole, and bringing, the contract workers, usually paid for out of the project, but for ownership of the projects and, as Jim mentioned, continuity from project to project and meeting our requirements, this is why we recommend bringing in FTE.
And for construction management at risk, there's still daily interaction that the county's going to have with the contractor, just everyday decisions that you have to make while you're building a building.
When we have certainly some vertical, quite a few vertical projects. We have Public Works, we have the burn. Now, I don't know what, after those projects are done, is on the horizon. I'm sure there'll be something, but what do you intend to do with this vertical project manager once we have completed, some of the bulk of these projects?
Well, right now, Public Works constructs most of parks facilities. So the bulk of their CIP, Public Works is designing and constructing, including all the boat ramps, right now. The boat ramp at Sandsprit, the reference, the staff contract project manager, he's also overseeing that project. So we already have that contracted employee stretched pretty thin. So for the foreseeable future, we're going to continue to help parks, building their facility, designing and constructing their facilities. We've been recently working with fire rescue, and we'll assist general services as needed, depending on their level of service.
So vertical is the specialty, but we can use this person in any project management role.
And then I forgot the question on the compliance coordinator. So come back to me because I forgot what it was.
Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, I was out and about the other day and noticed a new vehicle that I bet is in your department. It's a little fogger. It's orange. It's fogger.
Yeah, so that's I believe you're talking about a mosquito control fogger
Yeah.
to treat small areas. Yeah, so that we have the ability to put that in the back of a kind of a side-by-side type vehicle, or we can put it in the back of a pickup truck, depending on what we need to treat.
It's a terrific idea. I live in Rocky Point. It's extremely wooded, and there are lots of places. Then it's very mosquito-y because it's across from the northern end of Jupiter Island, which is a breeding ground. So it's perfect.
Yeah, we try to put the right size equipment in the right place, and in Rocky Point, it's kind of tough to get a big vehicle through there, so
Yeah.
it's a right delivery method there. And in Rocky Point, we've had a lot of mosquitoes this year, so we're putting a lot of effort into treating them there and throughout the county.
You're doing a good job.
So that's where it's all going. Got it.
That was a compliment.
Yep.
That's 2 today.
Commissioner Heatherington has remembered her second
Remember
question.
the second question. It's on the, so I definitely agree, the compliance coordinator, because I've had some feedback from applicants that their development applications are not moving and they're getting stymied in a department. So it seems that other counties are doing, though, are using contractors to do that. So I'm curious why we didn't consider that, because as we know, development applications, they're not consistent all year long. So whereas, are you finding that you have a backlog all year long, or?
So we have had dialogues with several of the local engineering firms in town to see if they'd be interested in performing that service, and the answer is they're too busy right now. They don't have an interest, the 3 that I've talked to. The other problem that presents itself for those consulting firms is if they're the reviewer, they can't also be the company that submits. So it's almost better for them to do that role out of town in an area where they aren't working. So that would lead us more of a regional firm, somebody out of Orlando or Miami or something like that. But because we have a unique comp plan, it really lends itself to doing it in-house. But that is something we have explored, and that is something we'll continue to explore.
Okay.
Move approval.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Hurd for tentative approval of the Public Works budget, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Heatherington dissenting.
Hey, before they go, I have a quick question. What Commissioner Hurd was talking about with this little thing, right?
The
Do you
little
ever-
fogger.
The little fogger? That sounds like a movie.
Meet the foggers.
Meet the foggers. Is there any discussion in the industry about drones or about just having something that's pre-programmed that goes down the street and doesn't even require staff to drive it? And
So we're already delivering mosquito control with drones now. So that's a part of our contract. We use it mostly in the uninhabited areas. The salt marsh mosquitoes in Jensen is one area where we use it. And we also we used to only use planes, now we also use helicopters as well to treat areas. So, but as far as the fogging for the ULV type fogging, like the truck that you see driving down the road, we haven't yet implemented it for that because the drone technology isn't there yet to recognize when you need to turn it on and off. And But it is, it's in the industry and it is expanding right now, drone technology, for sure.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. You're done. Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. No,
Oh,
kidding.
so,
Kidding.
oh, really? That's so clever. He has a dry sense of humor. He's from New England. Okay. Our next department up is Utilities and Solid Waste. It'll be presented by Mr. Sam Amerson, who is number one in the number two business.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the comment. It's our bread and butter, so we don't take offense to that. So, for the record, Sam Amerson, Utilities and Solid Waste Department Director. We've got some changes, of course, to the budget. We've got an increase of 9% for utilities and solid waste combined. One of the requests here for consideration is 5 FTEs. We need some additional support in customer service and meter reading. Currently, of these 5, these are transitional positions to FTE. They're currently either resource workers or contracted staff, and so we wanted to move to full-time employees there. In customer service, we've got additional workload with the septic to sewer program. We process contracts for each individual connection, whether it's a grinder install or a vacuum system lateral connection. We have contracts that we process for each of those. And so that's created additional work and additional phone calls. And utilizing resource labor, we've had difficulty retaining those employees. They're typically more entry-level positions, and there's a lot of rotation and a lot of vacancies when that happens. So we think we'd be able to improve our level of service in those areas. And then we're requesting 1 FTE. This is a completely new FTE to support additional fleet and heavy equipment repair and maintenance for the landfill and some of our utility fleet. We have about 180 pieces of rolling stock and heavy equipment that we maintain. And as far as our goals going forward in '24, we do want to continue seeking grants and low-interest loans to support the septic to sewer program. It's been quite robust, particularly with Golden Gate, has created about a 3-month backlog for us. So we're no longer taking customers' money, opening accounts there, unless they want to hire a plumber, and then they can have that done on their own. So if I've got a 3-month backlog, and we're working on that, we made some changes with our vendors and our inspection routines. But in order to reduce that, we wanted to give the customers opportunity to do that on their own with their own plumber or contractor. And with that,
Grinders?
yes.
You can get a grinder
No, not
before you-
grind, we're doing the grinders.
Oh,
Oh, it would be the vacuum system laterals.
So you can get a vacuum system before you could get a doctor's appointment.
Yes, true. But regardless, we did speak with FDEP, and we're going to confirm that in writing, but we were given a list of deliverables that they need. You know, we have 319H grant that provides a $1,000 discount to each customer that connects to the sewer system in the first year. And so even though a private contractor will do that install, we get the contractor's invoice, we get a clear check, and then we provide that to FDEP along with the address, location. We will get reimbursed the $1,000, so we can still provide that discount. So that was, I think, a win going forward. And then we want to complete design and permitting for the proposed recycle transfer station and the public convenience center, which is a property you purchased recently from Waste Management, the 9.5 acres adjacent to the transfer station facility. And I did want to mention, along with some of the other departments, we've seen significant increases in fuel, chemicals, also in electricity, and then the lion's share of our increases are for construction and demolition debris, disposal, the transportation and disposal. All of our service contracts have CPI rate adjustments, and they all maxed out at 4%. The collection contract had a provision for a ceiling of 5%, but the other vendors were at a 4% CPI. So that was an increase of about $900,000. Transfer station disposal costs, that's for transportation and disposal of our regular garbage, the MSW, at the Okeechobee landfill. And then I mentioned other contractual services, the actual processing of our construction and demolition debris to get as much recycling from that as we can. Also, our transportation of our side of the CND, which is bulk trash, and then also the vegetation processing contract included CPI rate adjustments as well. So those were the line items that had the biggest increase, but we are looking at 9% increase overall. And with that, I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emerson. Questions? I don't see any questions.
Second.
We have a motion for a tentative approval of this utilities and solid waste budget by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Hurd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, we're at the non-departmental portion of this agenda, and it'll be presented by Ms. Jennifer Manning and Stephanie Murley.
That was a close one.
That was a close.
Yeah, I was thinking of your,
So, Jennifer Manning, OMB Director. Is that me, or? All right,
that's done by design. One moment, we're having technical difficulties. I have nothing I
Got it.
Up, here he comes.
I think we got it. Can you hear me? Yeah. Operator error.
okay.
Hi, welcome back.
All right, non-departmental is for all expenditures that are not related specifically to any department. And I know earlier we mentioned moving the inmate medical to the non-department, and we'll do that before the end of the budget. Non-departmental includes just the programs themselves, as well as risk management, the economic development, the grants and aid section, the debt service, budgeted transfers, and reserves. The total non-departmental is $222 million. Of that, 14% is just for non-departmental items. 16% represents risk management. Economic development is $450,000. Grants and aid represents $6.1 million. The budgeted transfer is 16%, or $35 million, and reserves is $94 million. The non-departmental budget is $30 million, and it is comprised of the FP&L contract. It's a grant contract. We have the indirect costs, which is 1.6. We have parks, maintenance, and other charges, 1.9 million roughly. The wellness clinic represents 1.9 million. The property insurance, 7.4 million, or 25%. The audit and contracted services is 569,000. The professional services is 816,000. The rental and leases are 237,000. The miscellaneous, such as bank fees, child support fees, printing, and training, is 413,000, or 1% of this budget. The CRA payments represent $11,053, and the PTO payout is 1.1 million. So the risk management is for all expenses for risk adverse management of the county's self-insured program for property and health insurance. Then we have economic development, which is monies that have been allocated to the Business Development Board based on approved contract. The grants and aids, we have a contracted portion of the grants and aids, and that includes services like Humane Society, House of Refuge, and so forth. And then you have the grants of government agencies, and there is a list that will come up. And grants to private organizations and other grants and aids. So the contracted services, of course, includes Humane Society. They, based on their contract, there was a $70,000 increase, and it goes up every year by a small amount. The Treasure Coast Wildlife we did not increase their budget. Historical Society. This is based on the contract after we approved the budget last year, so I had to increase it for this year. And then you have the Life Builders of Treasure Coast, which is $10,000.
What is that?
So, oh, sorry.
Mr. Chair?
Question.
I can't remember what that is.
The Life Builders, it was Diamond Liddy from the, yes,
Got it.
that asked for those funds. Yeah. And then we move to the aid to government agencies, which includes health insurance, which that is, it's an unfunded mandate that we are required to fund, and that.
Not health insurance, health
Health
department.
Department, sorry. Health insurance, my brain, okay. All right, so then the Health Department, and we're required to fund that. Then we have the Health Department immunization program, which we agreed to fund as well. Medicaid hospital. Then you have County Indigent Hospital and Health Care Responsibility Act, Indigent Medicine, New Horizon, and Children's Home Society. So the only one that really went up, and this is based on what the state sent us those budgets, and it's the Medicaid hospital, which went up $108,834.
Now, some of those, ma'am, have asterisks, and at the bottom, it might be difficult for people to see at home, unfunded mandate and state statutes.
Right.
So
And-
those are, we have no choice but to pay those.
Right. And then there's also the local ordinances and the dedicated ad valorem funding that we have to put in. So the aid to private organizations include 211. Before I go on, we did not increase any of the requests for these funds. We maintained the same level as 23. So that includes the Alzheimer's Community Care, ARC, Boys and Girls Club, Council on Aging, Early Learning Coalition, Helping People Succeed, Treasure Coast, Food Bank, and I'm going to the next slide. Then Treasure Coast Homeless Society Services, Veterans Council, Volunteer in Medicine. The only added item was Special Olympics, because there was some discussion with the board to communicate about funding. So we placed it in the budget for the board's consideration, and that's the only increase for those. And then there's other aid to organization, which is Dory Schlossberg and Port Salona Fishing Dock. And when I get the contract, I will increase the amount based on the FY '24. And we have,
One second. Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, explain to me the Special Olympics aid position.
okay, that,
So Commissioners, we had an agenda item a few months ago in which the board directed staff to receive the application and enter into a contract with the Special Olympics for consideration for this budget cycle.
So explain the position. The county taxpayers are funding a private position for Special Olympics?
Yeah, I believe the item basically expressed that the Special Olympics person was going to help coordinate all the events and activities within our park system that goes above and beyond what we're currently doing. I'd have to pull the agenda item to give you the specifics, but that was brought before the board. The board voted in favor of it, so it was included in the budget.
Well, I thought we voted in favor of bringing it back for consideration during budget time. I am unfamiliar with the practice of using taxpayer funds to fund a position in the private sector. So we won't supervise this person, we won't create a job description, we won't do the scope of services, we won't do any oversight. We just, tell me how this works.
And my understanding is we're contracting with them like any type of contractor with a not-for-profit, and they're ensuring that the individuals that would use those services are being coordinated. I think that the trade-off was we weren't getting involved in the transportation business because that's where the bigger dollar is, and that this person's going to coordinate and make sure that these individuals all go to the specific fields where there's those specific activities. Now, if you give me a couple minutes, I'll be more than happy to grab Mr. Abate, and we can go a little bit deeper into the specifics, but I would need a moment.
I'm going to need to know a lot more about this position before I agree to fund it.
We'll take some more questions in the meantime. Commissioner Heatherington.
I recall the conversation when we had this item, although it was very well presented, certainly a very worthwhile organization. I thought there was going to be an item that was coming back to us that we would hear, because there was a lot of conversation on the transportation or not the transportation and how it will be implemented. So I left that day with the expectation that it would come back to the board, so we would hear more prior to the actually being submitted in the budget. So that's how I recall that conversation.
I have the motion that was from the meeting, if you'd like. Huh? Go for it, thanks. Not that I really want to jump in on this. It says a motion was made and seconded, directing the Special Olympics to apply for the Grants and Aid Program, which will be discussed in July, and direct staff to begin the process of shaping a memorandum of understanding with the Special Olympics. So, meaning discussed in July would be to present it here for consideration, and we went ahead and began developing that memorandum of understanding, but it is predicated on the fact that it would be for consideration today.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
That was my understanding, because the option, it was honestly the direction I wished we had gone in, that that person would have been our person and it would have been our staff. But the will of the board that day was to go and do it under grants and aids and give a grant to Special Olympics to have them provide the individual and the oversight of that program.
I see it similarly. I do prefer that it would be their person than our person, our FTE. And I think potentially we're getting hung up on the concept of the money being used for an employee. To me, I'm thinking of it as money being used in grants and aids for Special Olympics. If you scroll through, like the money for volunteers in medicine, just as an example that is there, we don't know if they're using that money to hire an employee. It's a lump sum that went to the organization. If you can scroll back to the other slide. Here, Council on Aging, that might be an employee. Boys and Girls Club could potentially be an employee. If you go back to the other slide, these areas here, or even the Humane Society or the Treasure Coast Wildlife Hospital, those could be employees, but we gave the money to an organization that we believe in that offers a public benefit to our residents. So I'm not specifically hung up on the fact that the $85,000 would be specifically meant for employment. I do like the fact that we would lump sum a dollar amount to a worthwhile organization versus having it be an additional employee inside Parks and Rec, because that comes with all of the other things we've heard from every single department today. Health insurance, retirement, all the extras. This is a number that we control. If it was an official employee within Parks and Rec, then every time anything changed to increase that person's expense to the county, that would happen for that person. So that's where I believe, in my mind, I'd prefer a lump sum to the Special Olympics organization and let them handle it. I do remember, and I appreciate Mr. Donaldson, you giving us a little refresher on how that item went. Commissioner Heatherington just said it. It was a compelling argument that day, the agenda item to discuss it. We all know what the Special Olympics means and what the organization is, but I was impressed that day and newly informed on what a large impact it has for Martin County residents. So I think that $85,000 works in my mind, because the impact that we're having across Martin County residents, year round, on all the different things that they could benefit from that organization, I'm okay personally with it. Staff.
Mr. Chair, I apologize, I stepped out of the room, but I did have two notes there also. When our staff did look at bringing it in as an FTE, the cost was considerably more. I think someone of that caliber was going to require a pay around $120,000 to $125,000. And also it jogged my memory. I believe the $85,000 is a cost share for that type of person, where part of that cost of the $125,000 to $150,000, if you include fringe, is being borne by the Special Olympics. So it's a percentage breakdown.
And I also remember that it was a conversation versus an employee more so than what they originally were looking for. Commissioner Smith was looking for was transportation, which would have been way more expensive. So this was us participating in a worthwhile organization at sort of the C tier level versus the B or the A tier level. Ms. Woods.
I just wanted to add that under the motion that Mr. Donaldson made, we would craft a memorandum of our grant and aid agreement that would come back to you all, which is what the motion was, and that would have a scope of work. And normally under this finance, this part of the budget, the Special Olympics would be required to file reports. And so we would know, it wouldn't simply be giving them $85,000 to hire somebody. We'd have a scope of work of what services to the chair's explanation for some of these other organizations. We have a scope of work, and we require a reporting under the template that we use. So the organization, at least in my opinion, should have some reporting requirements so that you know what services are being provided and there's a check and balance.
Understood.
Coming first.
Yeah.
What?
I just thought that was coming first.
There-
We got to this point for our review. Sorry.
Well, I guess if there is no money, then there's no reason to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But some of the
Chicken and
conversation,
the egg.
some of that conversation has already been had. Mr. Donaldson, you said you have, or some of our team has been having these conversations with the Special Olympics.
Yes, we just don't have it for you today. And it would be subject to, again, if you're going to consider spending the funds, we would bring you back that agreement.
Understood. So I guess as a way out is that if it was layered into the budget today and prior to us finalizing this budget, that agenda item comes forward and there isn't majority board support for that, then it would die that day. But if it doesn't get into the budget today, then the rest of the conversation is moot. Commissioner Heatherington.
I feel like that's backwards than what we originally discussed. But what is our current process? Because over the years, it seems to have changed on grants and aid. Everybody came in with a flat request. Do they make a new application every year? How is that done?
I think this is actually the best example of it. There is no formal really process as over the years you've had the list that's been on the grant and aid. There have been times when each individual grant or aid has requested an increase. I think it was about 5 or more years ago, there was discussion on how to more formalize the process. We went through about a year of examination on how to do it differently or better, and no change was made. So unfortunately, so as your administrator, one of the tough things you have to deal with is how do you discern one community service versus another one in terms of ranking. So it's not because you're looking at completely different types of services. So we largely rely upon the 5 of you to help discern what that is. And so unfortunately, it's not this is probably one of the more clunky processes we have, if you will. And some communities have certainly gotten out of the grants and aids and business entirely because of the complications that arise out of it. So that's, I think, we did not find, if Mr. Stokas was heavily involved in that, any example of a review process that helped vet public or these services. So unfortunately, just to be blunt, the fact that a commissioner asked for it or it got presented, 5 of you all voted affirmatively under that motion, so staff took it as which it is to be considered, and that's why we're talking about it today.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I think the latest that we added was Diamond's request a few years back.
Quite a while,
I'm sorry?
quite a while back, yes.
2, 3 years? Has it been 5, really,
I
already?
feel like it. Could be.
I think Don did a really perfectly great job of explaining it. It's at the will of the board if you want to add something to the program, and I like Commissioner Campy. This has been a conversation that's been had now for a couple of years. And transportation is a issue that has to be dealt with at some point in time for a whole host of different programs, not just Special Olympics, but that's for a conversation for another day. So this serves a part of our population that otherwise doesn't have the opportunity to participate, and it's a significant piece of our population. And I would have a really hard time explaining to anybody that we were leaving a piece of our population out when others are getting a lot of funded programs because they can participate in a more traditional fashion than others. So I hope it passes.
I do not disagree. The process is odd and is one of the frustrations I have had as a commissioner, because in the early days when I first showed up for my first couple of years on the board, it was during the 2008, 9, 10 recession, and we weren't giving money, we were slashing budgets. And I remember the frustration of slashing budgets to our not-for-profits just when they would need the money the most, and just when their services were much more required. So we waded through that, and then in the old days, Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Hurd, we hear back then, the room would be filled on Grants and AIDS Day with everybody. If you were doing pets, everyone came with cats and dogs. If you were doing, youth sports, you had all the little leagues and everybody wearing uniforms. And then if you had special needs individuals on any portion of the spectrum, they were all here, and they would have to come up and, with their hat in their hand. And I just didn't think that that was an ideal process. I know there's always concern about picking winners and losers, but that's exactly what we are responsible for doing. But those days, it felt like we were picking winners and losers right to their faces. And then the process shifted away from that, even though I do feel that it's the elected officials' responsibilities to do that. We know these organizations, either all 5 of us do or a majority of us do, understand the different value that these not-for-profits bring to our community. I also believe that if you help a not-for-profit take care of a service, the return on investment for taxpayer dollars is that maybe a young person, a young woman is not becoming pregnant. Maybe a young person is not becoming addicted to drugs, or a veteran can get mental health services before something catastrophic happens. Or residents can go to Volunteers in Medicine and handle an issue before they're going to the emergency room, because we pay for them to go to the emergency room as well. So when people say, hey, we shouldn't be using taxpayer dollars to support these organizations are acutely, professionally aware and trained to specifically offer a level of service that if they didn't, we would either have to do it or we would suffer the consequences of that person not getting those services. So then the process flipped to a board. The commissioners at some point relinquished their authority to do that and made it and pushed it onto a group of employees to do, which I thought was very unfair, because they then had to go around and be experts on all of these different charities, and then would come forward with their list of suggestions, either adding money or subtracting money, and then the commissioners would completely redo the whole decisions anyway. So it was very frustrating for staff to do that, so I did not like that. The final thing I would say is that we've sort of created, as to Mr. Donaldson's point, there is no process. I don't know how someone gets on. It basically felt that if you were on the list, you could stay on the list. And if you weren't on the list, you couldn't get on. And there have been several examples over the course of the last decade where not-for-profits have either formulated or came to Martin County to address an obvious need. We don't address human trafficking. We don't address bullying. We don't address equine rescue. So, and these are things that, some of those things fall in, and then we pay them in the sheriff's budget after it's a human tragedy of human trafficking or, mental health issues. Versus if we had put some of this funding into some of these other organizations, I still believe a huge correlation between bullying and school violence. We're spending a fortune on SROs for the after effect of kids that are bullied in school that decide to either violently act out or worse, come to school with a gun. So I mentioned it at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, I think, if the process is a commissioner, and I give Commissioner Smith credit, he was the one championing Special Olympics. I know the organization, did not blip on my radar screen, and I also had no idea how impactful it was in Martin County. So that's kudos to Commissioner Smith for that. I have equine rescue in EREF in my district. All of you have been out there to visit. That organization is getting very close to coming to an end. And I would like to see I use district funds there, which is what it was requested of me, but I don't see how that's not on this list. We're a rural equestrian community. But everything that happens with horses that people don't want to talk about, we just leave to a group of very generous with their time and their money to just handle it because we don't want to discuss it. So I will be supporting the Special Olympics portion of this. I wouldn't be opposed to having another conversation on exactly how this process should work and let the organizations come in and present what they do and what the return on investment is for Martin County taxpayers. We're a very, very generous community where people donate tremendous amounts of money to these organizations, but that's very hit or miss. One big donor drops in or drops out of an organization, it can torpedo the whole group. So I'm glad that Special Olympics is going to get an opportunity today to get into a little more of a formalized structure. I would also like to see that happen with EREF. If not today, then at least in the future. Thank you. I yield the remainder of my time back. What do you want to do? Here we are. Commissioner Heatherington.
I think everyone on that list is a super valuable part of our community. Every single one of them, they bring value, they bring merit. I like to add a few myself. I think drug use is rampant, and we had a vaping ordinance that we all would like to take care of all of these problems, address it, and fund them. But at the end of the day, this is where I struggle on approving something like this. We started the morning conversation off talking about a 4.6% roughly tax increase to all residents of Martin County, where Mr. Donaldson said, you are going to need a unanimous vote in order to pass the budget that you have sitting here, which we know it's going to be difficult to have a unanimous vote. So that, in my head, as I sit here throughout the day thinking, well, some things are going to have to be given up. And of course, nobody wants to give up anything. I don't want to give up. I didn't want to not have Public Works have 2 full-time, employees, which I think are probably warranted. I just think we can't afford it right now. And that's where, it's kind of now the rubber meets the road is what can we do? What can we defer? It's not that anything is not valuable. It's just that how do I look at a resident and say, okay, well, we're voting to increase your taxes by 4.7%. When insurance has tripled or 50 to 100% more for all of our residents, all of them, so they're struggling to pay their insurance. They're people on fixed incomes that probably will start losing their homes because they can't afford between insurance. Okay, yes, it means a few $100s here and there if you did a 4.7, which I don't think will happen. But those that can't afford it will start losing their homes. All over the state of Florida, we're talking about affordable housing right now. This is the antithesis, of affordable housing when you're raising taxes on people, because those that are on fixed income, they can't afford it, they're going to lose their houses. We're taxing businesses, we're taxing residents, and landlords are then going to raise their rents because their property taxes have increased. That's going to get passed along to the person that's living in the house. It's a whole, so, sorry to go on a tirade, is that everything in here is valuable. And I just don't, it's hard to pick and choose, and I hate the winners and losers. I want Public Works to have their people. I want this. Just might not be the right time to add this year when residents are super concerned about the expenses they're incurring. And we can only generate so much money. So I feel just very passionately that we have to look at the whole picture.
I don't disagree. I bet if we handed out the budgets and a line item veto, you give me the budget in a red pen, I'll deliver a 0 increase budget, but my choices might be different than your choices. That's what this process is. Most people know, but for those that are listening that don't, we are not allowed to speak to each other outside of this meeting. We can work with our staff individually. They're also not allowed to tell us, well, this commissioner's going to go this way and that way. So all of us come to this budget process with a different mindset. I could very easily deliver a 0 increase budget. I'm sure all of you could. We might disagree on what we cut and where we would put it. We sort of just dabble around the edges. We had a conversation this morning with the sheriff. Fire rescue and the sheriff, which to me, public safety is our #1 responsibility, but they're also the largest portion of the increases. All of them could fall right there. I wouldn't cut from there, but there are other things. But I know that environmental issues and flooding and those things are important. So I think when we get a little further in the conversation today, it's not going to be a 4.7% increase. We'll shave it down like we've done in the past, and we'll get it to where it needs to be. I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Heatherington, about people, holding on to their homes for dear life, but it's just a matter of where are the individual commissioner priorities. All valid. Commissioner Smith.
Mr. Chairman, how do you want me to do a suggested vote? You want me to take Special Olympics out and have it as a separate vote?
I think you'd have to do that because otherwise the whole thing fails, so potentially.
I would move staff's recommendation on the,
I just have to go over the rest.
Oh, there's a couple more.
Okay, so I'll just skip debt service and talk about budgeted transfers, which is just movement of dollars among the internal service funds. And we saw this slide earlier, which is all the reserves, dollars in the various funds. And then,
I'd leave it up for a second just to let people at home or whatever just get a glance at it. Thank you. I'll tell you when to take it away. There's a lot to digest here. Ms. Manning, can you explain to the folks at home what the categories across the top are? We know what general fund is. We know what special revenue, debt services, self-explanatory, capital, enterprise funds. Can you tell us what that is and what they are?
okay, enterprise funds are utilities and solid waste as well as golf course. And those funds they have fees for services, and so they're not ad valorem funded. So you have solid waste as well in there,
And the building department.
and the building department. Yeah, the building department is not an enterprise fund, but it's treated like an enterprise fund. Yes.
Airport as well.
Yes,
And
and
the
airport.
So for people following at home, these are departments of the government that basically generate enough revenue to be self-sufficient.
Self-sufficient, yes.
Okay, internal service,
So those are the health insurance funds and, the property insurance fund and OPEB. So we set those monies aside to pay our self-insurance.
and trust and agency.
That's just on like the Dory Schlossberg or.
Okay, so trust funds that come to us that we then have the ability to distribute.
Right.
Is that the only one?
And CRAs. So,
CRAs.
yeah, because we have a reserve for salary and CRAs, that's also a trust fund.
Thank you. You can progress the slides.
Okay. Everybody, I can just leave it up and then we can talk.
No, I mean, is that the last slide?
Yes, it is.
Now you could go to your question mark thing. Okay, now Commissioner Smith.
Chairman, I would move the grants and aids category less the Special Olympics, and I'll make a separate motion for that if this one passes.
It's non-departmental.
What?
Second.
It's for the non-departmental, or are you just discussing?
Non-departmental.
Well, you said just grants and aids.
Non-departmental.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith to accept tentatively approve the non-departmental budget exclusive of the Special Olympics line, seconded by Commissioner Hurd. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair, I would also move the inclusion of Special Olympics category into the grants and aids. Tentative approval.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner, let me pause that. Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, if this passes, then before the budget hearings in September, we're going to have a memorandum of understanding. We're also going to have a scope. We're going to have an understanding of what our expectations are with this partnership. So we're going to have compliance with the contract or with the memorandum of understanding. So we're going to have a clear path to compliance. The reason I'm asking is because I read at one of these contracts over the last month and looked at what staff was calling our compliance measures, and they weren't compliance measures. I think we do a lousy job of compliance with our contracts. I don't think we ever know what the performance measures are. I don't know that we ever require compliance. I think that we let an awful lot of these agencies, these organizations, write on cocktail napkins that this is compliance. And we say, okay, well, that you've fulfilled your obligation. If I'm going to agree to fund this, then there are going to be compliance measures that are terrific.
Okay, Commissioner Smith.
It's more of a general comment, I think. I have the utmost confidence in our staff, our legal department, our various departments that deal with contracts, that they do their very best to give us what the expectation of those deliverables are. I can think in many instances where those have been challenged in the past, and I know that the organizations give us sometimes more than we actually ask for. And I think the public gets from what we give them the expectation and then some, and I'm okay with that.
Commissioner Heatherington.
With those comments in mind, I would rather see an agenda item not singling out Special Olympics, but come back to discuss all of the grants and aids and talk about what the compliance is. And so I would rather discuss it as an entire grants and aids than feel like there's one item that comes back to us.
The problem with that, Commissioner, is that we can only decrease our budget at the next budget hearing. We can't increase it.
Understood. 2 points. One, to my colleague, I know she was just using that as an example. I also believe that, look, reviewing multiple grants and aid contracts and the deliverables and all of the different categories that they fall into is a moving target. But I do have the faith that our staff, both legal staff and others that are tasked with supervising and overseeing them, do a good job. Perfect job? Of course not, because there's no way for it to be perfect. But I feel that our tax dollars and the dollars that we've invested in these organizations, one, they're worthwhile organizations, and two, our staff is on them to look and see that it handles exactly, as well as the fact that we also have our clerk of the court and comptroller, Carolyn Timmon, and her staff that also do some oversight and review with where district funds go and things like that. So I do want to keep it separate because this specific dollar amount for the budget is specific to Special Olympics. I do plan on coming, like I said, forward in the future to see where we could do that, not necessarily to affect our budget, but there are reserves in places and things like that where money can be maneuvered if it came to that. Nothing I'd want to discuss about grants and aids in the next 3 to 4 months would alter the budget, in my opinion. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith specific to this Special Olympics line item of this. This is a tentative approval of, Commissioner Smith's motion is a tentative approval of the Special Olympics line item of the non-departmental budget, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Heatherington dissenting. Okay, Ms. Manning, anything more on non-departmental?
That is it for non-departmental. And I wanted to go in, the reason why we didn't list the commissioners' districts, because we wanted to discuss that separately. All the district commissioners, the districts were left at the same level, and I know you have a desire to.
Do you have a screen you can put them up?
Yes, I'm going to,
Didn't you have a screen this morning, Jennifer, that showed that?
That was the
Yeah.
value of the
the
districts.
I thought
district.
there was a.
I looked for it, I didn't see
I
it.
know, I didn't see it in this, but I thought you had it in your presentation this morning, on the screen.
Oh, just the increases from the.
Don had it on the doc cam.
Yeah.
Oh, it was your sheet.
Yeah.
Yes.
But can you pull up my,
Because I thought we saw it, but
just want to see what,
Yes.
what the amounts are that they can increase without.
That screen that you have there works for me.
Yeah, it's just that, I mean, if the other commissioners would like to remain at the
Doesn't
same
need to be that big.
amount.
Back it up.
Didn't mean to do that.
This is the senior version, thank you.
I was gonna say,
A little
is
bigger
that
than that.
I'm having a
Big print
difficult
version?
time right
How
now.
can we swing any wider than that?
There we go.
Okay,
Okay,
so when you're looking at District 1, for example, if he doesn't absorb the increase, his millages goes down by 9.66%. So I think it's roughly about, was it 37,000? I can't remember. Do you have your paper?
Approximately 10%.
10%.
Yes. So if you were to keep the millage flat, you would add another roughly $30,000.
And the same thing with the other districts. For example, District 2, your millage went down because your values went up. And so you are showing a negative 10.88
Millage reduction.
millage reduction. And District 3 is showing a 12.07 millage reduction. District 4. District 4 is showing a 9.63 millage reduction. And District 5 is showing a 10.65 millage reduction.
okay, now for the folks that are not familiar with what this is, do you want me to, or do you want to explain what these non-countywide revenue commission district MSTUs are?
Okay, so the district commissioners can request a millage or request funding for their specific district that they can only use for their constituents. And in the past, we have sunset the district funding, and then we reinstated the district funding for the various districts as we see here. And so we started out, I think, with 300,000 with District 1 or 200,000, and we've increased it over the last couple of years. So like I said, those funds can only be used in the district that is
And
allocated.
typically, those funds have been used in collaboration with other county projects to either enhance or augment them, or to provide, in some cases, assistance to solve a problem where there was not funding in any other budget. So I think sometimes you've added them to work, in neighborhood improvements or acquisition of property to better the neighborhood, to go into a community center. So those are the type of areas that I've seen those funds be used for.
Thank you. I think that was an excellent explanation. These district funds have also been called discretionary, based on commissioner's discretion. The five of us, obviously unique personalities, use the funds differently. When I first came on board, it was a percentage. It wasn't really a fixed dollar amount. It was a percentage, which allowed them through the course of the years to grow quite large. There was also no requirement in terms of use it or lose it, so there was the ability to stockpile up millions of dollars for larger projects, which again goes back to the concept of discretion for the individual commissioners. Historically, the commissioners have allowed each other to work that through. These numbers and all requests also go through our staff, our legal staff, and then go through the clerk of the court, Carolyn Timmond, for her review as well, correct? To make sure that it sort of falls within the letter of the law. I think, when I hear from my colleagues on what they have done, purchased property for Maggie's Hammock, purchased the Ham property, done all sorts of improvements. I use quite often some of the district funds to augment not-for-profits after my speech I just made. However, I'd like to increase mine because I'm in the process of working on something within the district, which I will be bringing forward for consideration of my colleagues shortly. Very important issue for us in District 5, and I would like to increase my district funds from $270,000 to $370,000. Now, when I come forward with what that will prime the pump for, if it's not an acceptable conversation with my colleagues, I do have the ability, I can't raise it after today, but I could lower it. So prior to the final budget in September, we will have a conversation on what what the potential plan is in District 5 with that increase. So that's how I'd like to do it. Anyone else looking to make any changes to their district funds at this time? Seeing none.
You need a motion for all these?
Are we done with the whole concept here?
Yeah, we're done, yes.
Okay.
I would move tentative approval of the total millage countywide and MSTU. Oh, no, it's not right.
Where's Hutchinson Island?
It's right below it.
Special
Yeah,
district.
actually-
It's under.
Oh, Hutch Island, I see.
I would move tentative approval of the non-countywide Revenue Commission District MSTUs
And special district.
and special districts.
Second.
Ooh, photo finish. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith for tentative approval of, excuse me, non-countywide Revenue Commission District MSTUs and Special District A61 Hutchinson Island MSTUs, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mention is the capital projects, because they said it was not on the list, but I mentioned it in my presentation that it was tentatively approved, and I listed all the areas that were increasing or decreasing, and I didn't know if you still wanted to make a motion on that again today, or you can bring the slide back up.
I think you should.
Okay, we will do that.
So now we're going to get
Back
into
to my
the
presentation.
rolling up of the sleeves.
Not that one. Oh, yeah, that one, yeah. Yeah. I got this, baby, I got this.
Well, Mr. Donaldson, didn't you have some?
Yeah, so Jennifer, if you could just summarize where we are in the, if we look at the aggregate total countywide millage increase, the way it is currently presented.
Yes, it's at 4.5863, 582.
And so, as I mentioned earlier, each one of these, you've now tentatively approved all of the department budgets and the revenues that go along with them, from what was submitted, did you take out the sheriff reduced his budget in his request?
Yes, we haven't taken out anything yet.
Okay, so I think that, so if you could,
So this, as we have done in the past, we use this as sort of our worksheet.
Yes.
yeah,
A
just as-
computerized, real-time worksheet. So I'd like this to sort of either split screen it or be able to pop it back and forth based on the conversation we're about to have. So
so I just,
Sheriff came, he's the first one, right? With how much? 7?
769,000.
So you're going to deduct that right now?
Yes. Mhm.
What was that for?
He was just for an additional, Don Donaldson went, paid him a visit.
when we had our discussions on the budget, the sheriff recognized the tough position
Gravity.
we were in, and so from what was submitted in the document that you have, and at the podium, and what he presented today was $750,000 roughly less than what was presented. And so the sheriff has, already offered that and has already, and that's what you tentatively approved. And so that's, just wanted to make sure that that number in this sheet was reflected properly as exactly where we are at this moment.
Was that in his operations or his CIP?
It was in his operations.
He said he deferred instead of hiring.
So the CIP is a separate discussion, and those actual fall under the board themselves. We provide those funds and the capital improvement plan that fall under public safety, and the sheriff actually go through our general services or would be constructed by Public Works, depending on what it is, but these are all, I believe, general services are constructing those. So any reductions that are made there would be affected, and those that you have full control over those.
Ms. Manning, Ms. Murley, it started at what, 4.5 to?
4.583. And this correlates to page 51 in your budget book. if you
So-
wanna-
I just want
Sounds
to do a running total. So with the sheriff's, 769,000? It drops it down to 4.325.
Correct.
Now, what we have done in the past is, obviously, to start looking at, $5,000 and $10,000 at a time is not going to really have any consequential changes. I think all 5 of us had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Donaldson and administrative staff to come up with some other things that could work on this. So let's discuss them. Does Mr. Abate need to be here for this?
They do not unless you request them. They're all fully aware of all that's been contemplated prior to today. In fact, as the budget was prepared, each department was prepared to reduce their CIP by, to start with, 1/2 of the new projects that were on there. And so what initially in my conversations with you all, all departments are fully aware of those cuts and supportive.
Thank you. So I have a list here that has, let's just run through them. Some of them will explain to the general public as they're following along. The next one was Parks FARB. Can you explain what a FARB is, Ms. Manning?
It's a fixed asset replacement
Budget?
budget, and they're, for all the parks that we have existing, so we will try to maintain them to the level of service that they need to be. And I remember we had constituents talking about the parks and the services that's being provided, so this is where the funding comes from.
Correct. So the first thing, now, this deduction of $250,000 from the Parks FARB, that's not leaving the fund empty.
No,
It's just, obviously, the goal of all of our department heads that require FARBs is to constantly keep them at a healthy level for potential. But, rainy day funds, if it's, here he is, if it's raining, sometimes then we need to tap in. So taking the 250,000
Yeah, he had requested 750,000, and we're removing 250 out.
Okay.
But he
So where are you
says-
going to take that out? That's full, oh, so you're just
Barb.
rolling that same number down?
Yes.
Oh, you're going to do it like that? Very nice. So now we're at 4.2. And then also Timer Powers Park, I can explain that. There's been conversation for quite a while of, there are a couple of permanent sets of bleachers at the Timer Powers Park rodeo rink, the covered rodeo rink. And whenever there are events there, they have to bring in either some of our mobile Parks and Rec bleacher systems, or they rent them for big events like the rodeo and others. We talked about filling that in with official permanent bleachers because there are a lot of other events that could be taking place out there if we had this. That price tag for those permanent bleachers was $1 million, which I think all five of us would agree it's not earth-shattering that they're there or not. They've been making do in the past. All the organizations that utilize that facility have been making do without them. So that is a big number to shave, and we would postpone the $1 million purchase of Timer Power Park bleachers. Too bad we didn't have 5 or 6 other sets of bleachers elsewhere in the county. Okay, so did you deduct that now? Yes. So now we're down to 3.9. The next is the CIP General Services, the county-wide building envelope FARB. We're familiar with what a FARB is. They're willing to reduce that number for this year's budget by $100,000. The countywide HVAC FARB additionally by another $100,000. And then the sheriff's FARB. And what people must remember is that the sheriff is also responsible for our jail, correct? Is this sheriff's FARB would include his facilities as well as the jail?
And keep in mind that your staff are the ones that actually maintain those facilities, so it's maintaining the buildings that, it's our FARB, yes, so it's sheriff's, it's our jail, and the building that the sheriff sits in is they're all county assets, but it's our responsibility to maintain them.
Understood. So we get the day in, the day out. So with that, we're looking to shave $620,000 from that FARB. That being said, the next one is CIPs for Martin County Sheriff's Office Logistics and Operations Center. Mr. Donaldson, do you want to?
Yes, and so that's we're constructing part of that facility this year. This does not eliminate the funding for the logistics centers, but it does obviously significantly reduce it, and would just delay it perhaps a year unless we can get some grants to help us out. So it's a project that will need to be done. We're just deferring up to a year for that project.
Okay. And that is $781,000.
Correct.
Okay. So the next item is, remember this morning I mentioned about the revenues that are outpacing their budgets? And one of them was ad valorem, but the other two is revenue sharing as well as half-cent sales tax. So we're anticipating that it will exceed the budget. But so we're wanting to replace those, take out the ad valorem and replace it with anticipated fund balance. And we would not do the projects unless we actually have those monies. So by February, we should know, okay, we have enough fund balance to, do the rest of the projects that we didn't take out.
And that added up to $2,180,000, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that is the suggestions that came from our administration and our financial team. Do any of my colleagues have issue with any of those? I wouldn't assume. Seeing none, that brings us from where we started
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
could you just please go back and re-explain that, replacing that with fund balance?
Okay, so if, for
Jennifer,
example-
maybe give a shot of it. So essentially, if you looked at Jennifer's presentation earlier, one of the areas you could see that you have an anticipated revenue in whether it's taxes, where we can't budget 100% of the taxes, and then, but we actually got 100% or a little bit more. So so there are some revenues like that we normally don't budget that much for, and you have to wait till the year to see how they come in. So the issue is that, let's say you go into a recession and people aren't paying their taxes, you're not going to collect as much. Therefore, you're not going to be able to do the project. So what we're saying is that we're kind of squeezing the last bit of juice out of the orange, but we have to monitor this very closely, that if there was a downturn that happens this winter, there are some projects that we would either not be able to do or defer till the following year. So I think you're leaving them on the books that you want to do the projects, we're going to do these projects unless there's a revenue downturn. And if there's a revenue downturn, then we know there's $2.1 million worth of projects we're going to have to defer. That's what we're saying.
Is that based on the capital improvement
Yes.
plan on how you?
This would be best.
prioritize what to defer?
So we will be monitoring, and there are some projects in your CIP that wouldn't be constructed till the end of next year during your budget process, or there's a few projects that we would look at that are accumulating funds for the following year. So those are the projects we would be looking for as the year two projects to defer is what we're putting on there. But it just simply means that if there's a downturn, a project that you thought we were going to do next summer may not happen next summer, or the project you thought you were going to do in 2025 may have to go to 2026. But that's just the reality of, so you wouldn't be as secure in some of those projects. And I would advise you exactly which ones we would target should we get into that economic situation. February is typically the time that we kind of true up, at least for that first half of the year. Where you are, how much money did we actually collect at the end of this year? And that's your opportunity to make those adjustments.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Commissioner Smith?
In addition, in some years, there are projects that, for whatever reason, just don't happen.
Yes.
I mean, as much as we may approve a whole litany of things that are going to happen, they just don't. And they go into fund balance, or the portion of that budget goes into fund balance, and then we reallocate that
Yes.
at what time of year?
It's usually in February, because that's the time that the clerk is finished with their auditing of the numbers, so
The books are closed.
then the books are
Because
closed.
that's usually in the millions.
Yeah.
Thank you. I also think that sometimes the percentages do come in higher. I want to let our residents at home be assured that we, as a board policy, maintain a 10% reserve. Can you show the reserves
It's
slide?
over 20.
So it's not like we're, biting our nose to spite our face here. And during the presentation earlier today, when commissioners talk about, look, this employer, that employer doing this, our departments came in, for the folks that might not have been following along all day, relatively flat. Although there were increases, they were for the same things that everyone's. Departments that utilize equipment that needs gasoline, state mandated, unfunded requirements for increases of insurance and retirement and other insurance issues for property that we're insuring. If your homeowner's insurance went up, we insure things. Equipment is more expensive, the contracts are more expensive, so that's where these increases came from. The items that we just sliced off here to bring it down from 4.5 to 2.6 so far is nothing that is going to catastrophically affect our personnel or our operations. Mr. Donaldson?
Yeah, just two things. I know the slide that Jennifer had up there, one of the complications of a county budget for you all in the reserves is a good illustration of it, is those funds cannot easily be moved from one category to another. So in your business account, you may be able to spend the money on personnel as you do on equipment, but a utilities dollar can't be spent anywhere other than the utilities or gas tax fund. And so this summary does not include all of the different legal requirements on how those dollars can be spent. So where we are right at this point is any other further cuts are likely to require either a significant project that's been a priority or a program or a facility that needs to be done. So I just want to, we could certainly go further, but it's not going to be easy. Not that what has been reduced is certainly significant already, and those FARBs are basic how we deal with maintenance, replacing an air conditioner or a piece of playground equipment that's rusted that needs to be replaced. Instead of replacing it, it'll be, ground and painted, and, saved for another year or so. So that's just, just want to remind you that that's where we are at this point.
True. However, it's not that we eliminated the FARBs in the categories. We shaved them. So if there's a rusty playground, there's still money to necessarily replace it. This would be things that might be towards those are like rainy day funds for repairs that you could potentially have to make. Agreed. So I guess the question to my colleagues is this. You've seen what we've shaved here. You've had an opportunity to review your binders. You've had an opportunity to meet with staff. What level of comfort do you feel with what you've heard today, what you're seeing here on this screen? The total millage countywide and MSTU, excluding Commissioner District MSTUs and the special district, this has a 2.648% increase. If you are looking for more than that, this is the time you would say it so that we can start to either look for those decreases and reductions or, but I was just going to say what we could do is we need to take a mid or a late afternoon break for closed captioning. We can take a little 10-minute break and let you think on that, or would you like to go right now?
But this then brings us back to where we were in 2021, correct?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good, thank you for reminding me, Commissioner. So the millage that this would set would be slightly lower than the fiscal year 21 millage, which is also lower than the fiscal year 22 millage. So this would take you back, had you kept your tax rate level the same in 2021, this would be the equivalent budget today. So that's my comment earlier is that, this board has always funded what you need. And when you, instead of carrying on and holding on to money, you could have held on to all of that last year. But you did not. You did a tax reduction to give the taxpayers back some money, which you did a great job. And unfortunately, the inflation caught up to us this year, and you're having to do a slight millage increase, but it still is the same, like I said, as you said, Commissioner, of what it was in 2021. And actually, that's found on page 52 of your book, if you want to look at how that comes out. That it has the millage rates, the total countywide millage rate of 6.7618, and I think this puts it at 6.7615, correct?
It's actually less than that.
Rounding, yeah, there's a rounding, yeah.
Yes, thank you. So that's just the table that shows how our millage has been, and so if this reduction takes it back to that FY '21 millage rate.
Ms. Murley and Ms. Manning, if we were looking to bring it down to a 0% increase, what's the dollar amount to do that?
I think 24.5 million will get you there.
22.
22 now, right?
To take 2.64?
Yeah.
You just spent,
Because you've taken out,
Well, what's
Like,
20 million.
because we would have to,
We took out 5 million.
okay,
Yeah.
so 10 million. We were, I was thinking of getting it to the rollback rate, sorry.
No. If you were to go to a constant, to eliminate the shave off the
So you'd have to
2.6.
take out another.
Let me
take
just
out Another
finish.
5.8, let me see.
If you took 5.8 out to go from 4.58 to 2.6, how many more millions would you have to take out to go from 2.64 to 0?
It's like another 6 million.
12 million.
Keep moving that thing around.
Oh, I did 12. Hold on.
Is it 12 million? That's no one was 0.
That's too much.
120 million. Let's see.
10.
Is it 12?
102.
Do 10.
Thank God for that spreadsheet, huh?
Yeah.
It's a,
In the old days, we used to do it by hand.
Yeah, on Greenbar.
you see how we're basically not. No,
Uh,
It's going to be like 5 million.
1, 8,
6. That's 6 million.
Okay, there you go.
7.
7. 7's not enough.
7.5.
7.5.
8.
What the hell?
Yeah, so it's going to be like 7, 8, or 7, 9.
Between 7 and 8, 7.5 and 8 million.
Yeah.
To keep the millage.
All right, something to be considered. Let's take a break and we'll come back at 4 o'clock.
You're on.
Okay, we are back from our final afternoon closed captioning break. It's July 17th, 2023. We are at the closing portion of our Board of County Commissioners Budget Workshop meeting. And where we left off was we had taken some deductions off of the tentative budget that would bring us to a 2.649% millage increase. Today, this would only be a matter, what our function here today is to set a millage. We will then come back to 2 budget hearings in September. Just one? Two. Yeah, and that's when we would actually adopt the official budget. Today, we're setting a millage that we can lower in the future, but we cannot raise prior to the 2 budget hearings in September. So to my colleagues, I would say, as the question I had asked as we were before the break, what do you think about 2.649% of a millage increase? If that number doesn't work for you, do you have suggestions on what we can do to continue to cut and shave? Us using a knife to do that? Or we can also make some changes through the process into the September. But how do you want to move forward now? Commissioner Smith.
Just a more practical matter, can you both or one share with us what that equates to? What does so we'd have to reduce it by 2.6, right?
Yes.
What does that equate to in dollars?
It would be an additional 7.95, 7,950,000.
No, less than that.
No, yes, 7.95.
No.
No.
Can you restate your question?
I'm sorry?
Can you restate your question for me? I think.
Can you restate the question? It's like a game show.
To get it to zero, are you
Get to
saying?
0, the dollar equivalent is how much?
795.
Didn't I just say that? Okay, thank you, ma'am.
7.95
5 million.
Yeah,
Thank you. I just,
yes.
that's
But that's what I was saying, an additional 7.95.
that's how much it would be reduced by to get to 0.
Sorry. This just in?
Can you-
Or
4-1, yes. Take it out quick. That never happened.
And to recap, that that the millage that we are looking tentatively at this year is on par or less than it was in 2021 and 2022.
correct.
That's correct.
And in order to get to a 3-2 vote, we'd have to eliminate how much more out of the budget?
It will be a total of 24.5 million. We only reduced it by 5.8 million, so we would have to do another 18
18.7 million.
Yeah.
For a 3-2.
Doesn't add up to what we just did.
Yeah, that would be
A big number.
catastrophic in the administrator's opinion.
That's what we would have to be.
With the percentages that we just did, that, the percentages don't add up to me for
So-
that 24 million.
So you would still, there would, if any, the net result would be is that there would still be growth in your tax base between, in terms of the voting. So in other words, if you looked at the amount of growth that you had, which is 12%, what the legislature is saying is that if you had somewhere around 8% growth, you would be, and kept the millage flat, then you would have been able to do a 3-2 vote. Because of the 12% growth and that not being new construction, you actually, it's the percent over rollback rate. The rollback is as if you kept the actual revenues at the exact same as last year. And so the legislature's allowing you to take some growth, but only a certain percent. And that percentage is less than 12. So therefore, in order for you to have more than that percentage, it requires a 4-1 vote, and then you go over another amount, it goes to a 5-0 vote. So just, I think, in your original budget at 31 million, right? Minus 25?
Oh, yeah, okay,
So then so that gives you the idea is that the legislature is saying that you can only use $6 million of your growth, not
Because you didn't.
not the whole 22,
Because you didn't have population
yes.
because we did not have population
by their formula.
by their formula, yes.
It's an interesting incentive.
You know, I think most communities would never see or even understood that this was buried within the formula, except you would have to be a slow growth community to actually experience it.
Well, I guess when we hear about 1,100 people a day moving to Florida and that Tallahassee and the administration in Tallahassee is trying to even out the population increases so that they're not all in Jacksonville, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, the villages, that they can sort of stick and carrot you with, you're either going to participate in the plan, or if you don't, then they create situations like this.
You're almost being penalized by the drastic increase of property values.
Well, you're being
Well-
penalized because you didn't grow.
Yes.
They've increased.
Commissioner Hurd.
Well, let's begin an exercise on eliminating 20 million additional dollars from our budget. Let's see how palatable that is. Start giving me some examples. Where are you going to hit first?
Well, I mean, as your administrator, I would, completely eviscerate your CIP.
You would?
That's I think if you look at all the other services, there's nothing to take from libraries unless you want to start closing libraries down. You heard from your Parks and Rec department, who actually was the only one that's able to go with a zero change in budget, then you're eliminating programs. What portion of your budget in Public Works is ad valorem would be mosquito control, so if you want to eliminate, or your coastal budget. And so I don't know of any programs that you have under your purview that are, have any options to remove that aren't already level of service and necessary for your public. The capital program are things that you could defer, building a park. Wojciech Park is an item that is new for next year, and all the others. But even eliminating all of the new money you put in the CIP isn't enough. As we looked at your constitutional officers and all those, if the $22 million in new ad valorem wasn't enough to even going just to that, you have to go less than that. Then to fully fund the constitutional officers, you have to actually go into your existing budget beyond taking. In other words, you're taking negative growth. You will have to shrink. You'll have to admit that any cost of increases to insurance and everything else will have to be absorbed by removing services.
Okay.
And even if we took a large chunk away from the sheriff's budget, he could then appeal that budget to the governor or to the legislature,
Cabinet.
to the cabinet. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, historically, the cabinet leans primarily in favor of the budget request of the professionals in law enforcement versus the elected civilians of the BOCC.
Jennifer, if you could put on your original slide that showed where the ad valorem was, the growth, the tax base growth was going. That was it, yeah, those two slides. You had the two tables, one, no, not the percentage, just had the actual values. You had the CIP, next slide.
The next one?
Yeah, so if we go back to that one, so if you go back to the CIP. So this represents the new money, so, and not all of this is general fund, but the ones that have the general fund is parks at 3.5 million, of which we've already taken, $1.2 million, right? Public buildings was at 4.5 million, and which you've already taken,
More than a minute, yeah.
over $1 million there.
3 or 4.
And law enforcement. So if you, I think so that there's another roughly, 8 million left in that, I think, something like that. So you have $8 million in funds into your CIP. Now, we would look at those, and you'll see in the CIP that those projects are largely projects that have been in planning for some time, and a lot of those funds went to make up the cost increases to do those. But if you were looking for funds that only get you 8,
You'd have to do it 2 more times. Or almost.
yeah, so then, the only other place to do that is to actually go into your operation budgets. Or reduce the CIP all the way, to go into projects that you've already been funding with reoccurring funds to eliminate your CIP.
And what if, it's not like you could get halfway there, you'd have to get all the way there. So there's no second place, it's all or nothing. So even if we looked to take some money out of reserves to pay down a one-time thing of lowering the responsibility, it wouldn't work, because you'd have to take 20 million of it. It's not getting to 14, it's 0 or 20, correct?
Yes.
So you're either not climbing the mountain, or you're getting all the way to the peak.
So my recommendation would be to stop now and adopt a village to think about it. You always have the ability to reduce it, but if you want to go further, we can. We're here to.
That has an old number on it. There it is. Okay. But Commissioner Hurd, I appreciate that talking exercise. People need to hear that. That it's not like we're sitting up here just. So.
Do you want a motion? Do you want something?
Yeah.
I would move the tentative total millage. You want the bottom line, right?
Sure.
Total millage countywide and MSTU, excluding commission districts and special districts. But you don't want that to exclude that. You want that.
We already did a motion for that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Try one more time. I would move the total millage countywide, MSTU, excluding commission districts and special districts, of 2.649%. Right?
Yes.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith, as he had stated, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed?
That motion that motion fails 3-2, with Commissioners Heatherington and Hurd dissenting. The reason that it failed is it has to be a 4-1, correct?
Yeah.
At the very least.
For at least September, we need 4-1.
Yeah, so
We
technically.
would want to get it now, so we don't have to go through that exercise.
Understood. I'm just stating it so everyone else knows.
Can you repeat that? You said you don't need it today, you need it by December?
Yeah, but if we don't get it today, then it's not going to work because it's not going to change.
Right.
Yeah, so unless, so the statement is correct. You could set your tentative budget as it is today with your 3-2 vote, but in September, when you vote for the individual general fund, category, you will need a 4-1 vote based upon the budget as it is this second.
Commissioner Smith?
I think I understood that. So you technically today don't need a 4-1 vote.
That's correct.
So we just had a 3-2.
Well, that's not how I had heard it going into this. I had not heard it that way.
The,
The other way.
it's important to know, and the counselor can step in if she needs to correct me, is that this is a tentative hearing. I mean, you're setting a tentative budget, and simple majorities will actually work for everything. But we all know that come September, that when you do the actual adoption of the budget, the vote will require a 4-1.
And that'll require 7 point something million.
18.7 extra million for a simple majority.
You got to say that louder so everyone at home can hear you.
So in order to get a simple majority vote, we would need to cut an additional $18.7 million out of the budget.
Okay, well, there you have it.
And Mr. Donaldson is suggesting that that needs to come all out of the CIP.
Yes.
Why not operations? Since that's my objection to the budget in the first place, is the operational budget is bloated in two departments.
And you'll have separate votes on different ones. It's simply because the operation budget has been approved and it's mostly staff intensive, and you'll be doing a reduction in the level of service. So this is the capital budget is the least impactful to your existing levels of service as presented by your departments.
Commissioner Smith?
So in September, when we do the 27 or 32 votes that we do in our final budget adoption, every one of those categories gets broke up. And at what point in there do you need a supermajority versus a simple majority on those votes?
Okay, so if we go by what we have right now, we would need 4 votes for the countywide, at least 4 votes for the countywide.
For the millage of 6.7615. Fire rescue, MSTU at 2.7002 would need a 3-2. Parks and Recreation at .1642 would need a 3-2. And then stormwater and roads combined would need a 4-1.
So if what I think I heard Commissioner Hurd just say, and Commissioner Hurd, correct me if I'm wrong, your concern is the value or the cost of staffing in our, what fund is it?
Well, it's public safety,
Public safety.
18% increases.
Okay, so in that number, it can still be a 3-2 vote in fire rescue, correct?
Correct.
And those that don't want to vote for fire or rescue don't have to.
Correct. You could even take today's vote if you'd like and separate it out by countywide and then the separate MSTUs if you'd like, for clarity.
Because the county-wide doesn't have that in there, correct?
Correct. Your general fund is essentially your, all your county departments like administration, general services, the sheriff, capital improvements is the CIP, and then coastal and healthcare are what comprise the countywide.
So come September, there are options. It's not a simple 4-1 or 5-0 vote come September.
No.
There are at least 5, as you just described it, or 6 different categories of choices that'll either be a 4-1 or a 3-2.
Correct.
And there's not, and there's not a roll-up at the end. It's all
Correct.
separate votes.
It's all separate.
So today, at least as I understand it, tell me if I'm wrong, the tentative millage rate can be set with a 3-2 vote. Come September, you can separate, well, we will separate those votes anyway, because we separate 26 different motions. And those that don't like those department increases can vote against those department increases.
But I thought at the end, when you go through all those sheets, we then always did do
We don't.
we don't?
Still got to have a 4-1.
Nope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no matter
so-
what, at the end of the day, it's still 4-1.
No, we don't
It's
have, we
still
don't
by
have.
The countywide.
it's for the, still per taxing authority, so you'll adopt the millage, and then you'll adopt the budget associated with that millage.
Simple, yeah.
Right, but you just
But
said,
no total, here's 643 million.
Yeah, we're not,
right, so, but each one of those categories gets a separate vote.
Correct,
yes.
And some of those categories can be a 3-2 vote.
correct.
But a couple of.
Most of them will be that way. So your utilities budget, all of the innumerable funds that are out there, it's just these categories here using ad valorem tax base. And in particular, is the general fund, which is 78% of the, of your,
General fund doesn't have in there one of the votes that you know won't get. I say you know, we know won't get.
yeah, so that's kind of the big one in the room is the general fund. And it has all of those services aggregated together that you can't pull apart. As you mentioned earlier, it would be nice if you could pull out whether the sheriffs or the constitutionals and have a separate, but you're unable to do that.
Right, but I'm trying to be as generic as possible. Someone could vote for that, knowing that they also, and have in the past, voted against the category that they don't care for. So you could still have a 4-1 vote with this general fund voting against a department or a category that you don't want.
You're making an assumption there.
I'm going on history, case history.
I wouldn't use that.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I mean, I appreciate what you're doing, but we're kicking the can down the road to a potential real situation where you won't get there in September either. Because we're not going to start the whole budget processing over. You don't have any tricks that you're keeping from us for September, correct, Mr. Donaldson?
No.
Ed, I'm talking purely voting. I'm not
I understand,
talking-
3-2 versus 4-1. I don't know if you get 4-1,
But you don't need 4-1 for the whole thing.
but the ones you do need it for, you might not get.
Well, but it won't have fire rescue in it.
It's not only a matter of that for some, I would guess.
I think we're confusing the general public.
Well, we're having, some of this is meant for the general public to get every concept. The rest of it is for us to get an opportunity to speak to each other. Look, I can't speak for Commissioner Jenkins or Commissioner Smith for making the motion and seconding the motion. None of us are in favor or looking forward to increasing the tax for our residents or ourselves. We started this process a couple of months ago, several, listening to our staff and department heads and Mr. Donaldson and our members of the budget, and went item by item, asked the questions, found where we could. I'm sure most of us asked the same questions. What else can you cut? Where can you find these things? Do we really need to do this? Is this something we need to do now? We've had an opportunity to negotiate firefighter contracts. We voted for them. I've said it a couple of times, I was very surprised by the initial numbers that were asked. They were much higher than have ever been asked for in the past, but when it was explained to me, and I've had the opportunity to work with the chief, with members of the public that, at least in my district, invite the chief to come and speak to the public and explain it to me. I, as a representative of my constituents, understand that those dollar amounts, although high, have to happen, or you launch into a whole nother problem with retention and recruitment, and that is a real problem. The sheriff came this morning, I thought laid it out pretty clear, shaved where he could, it is what it is. We were elected to represent our public, and, all we can do is hear information from the people that offer it and decide, do we agree with these numbers, and they're valid or not? Leadership, in my mind, is making a motion and a second and then voting for something that is uncomfortable for us. but the public sent us here to do all of their homework for them. We lay it out very clearly for the people that are interested, but a 2.64% increase, which I don't like personally either, I feel is a reasonable increase. I think each department explained, hey, I need to add this person or that. Now, I agree with what Commissioner Heatherington said. A couple of those FTEs, we probably could have pushed down the road. But the clear point here is that even if every FTE that we debated today, up or down, the $85,000 for Special Olympics, up or down, means nothing. We're talking about finding an additional $20 million or doing a 2.64% increase and getting to the votes. The reason, which is weird, for the first time ever, we needed to have 4 is because Tallahassee has worked some angles that if you don't continue to grow your communities to a level that they feel comfortable with, they're going to make you get 4 or even 5-0 votes. And so, yeah, I don't want to vote for an increase today, but I can, with a straight face, speak to my constituents, either in groups or individually, and say, this is the best that we could come up with under the set of circumstances that are here. No one wants to give up any services. I get that. For me, the ones that I won't, that are non-negotiable, is public safety. And then after public safety, it would be flooding. And then after flooding, it's probably environmental. And then you can work it down from there. If we were in a recession like we were in 2008 and 9 and 10, when we were closing parks and we were closing libraries and we were furloughing people and not hiring and shaving people's benefits, the percentages that people had to pay for insurance and the rest of it, changing out the PTO, that's because we were in like a really dire set of circumstances. Times are tough, but we're not in the Depression or Great Recession that we were in then. Revenues are up. Our coffers are appropriately, filled so that if some kind of major catastrophe came our way, we could deal with it. I mean, I don't want to be up here over-talking this, but, this is what we're here for, to make these difficult decisions to represent the public. So if you either agree with our staff that they've brought forward the best potential budget that they could for us to agree to, or you don't. There's politics involved, I get it, but, if anything, the 1, 3, and 5, if we're going to talk politics, whether it's the 3 of us or someone else, those are the seats that if this is a politically detrimental decision to make, I could potentially be seeking reelection, and I don't care because we still need to do the budget, and I value the budget that was presented by our staff. And then the big nut is fire rescue and sheriffs. We've known that for months. I don't have I'm not have any second thoughts on what we've done for that. Our public would be comfortable with those decisions, because if we shave them down, and God forbid something catastrophic happens, whether it was the result of a budget change or not, our public would look at us and say, how did you let that happen? How did a deputy, God forbid, get killed? How did fire rescue personnel get killed? Or some catastrophe. Now, hopefully it'll never, ever happen, but we need to organize our community in case it ever did. So if you want to, gentlemen, go with the 3-2 and hold our breath until September. I don't know if we're sending the proper message to the public, but if the decision can't be made today, then it's not going to be, I don't assume, any different in September. And the other problem, and my final word, Commissioner Jenkins, is I don't understand how 3 of us have to prop up 2 others. That there's almost a mindset, not so much 2, there's a mindset that someone gets a pass. The budget gets approved, everybody gets what they want, everything goes smooth, but someone just historically gets a pass. That's not ideally fair. Commissioner Jenkins.
I was trying not to be like this, but We know Commissioner Hurd is not going to vote for fire rescue nor the sheriff's department, so we know where she stands. So Commissioner Heatherington, to get your support on this budget, to make it a 4-1, what's it going to take? What are you looking for? Where do you want to cut?
So,
This is your deal.
Commissioner, thank you. As I started at the beginning of the day, and I've had these conversations with staff, we sat in a room, and I said I certainly wasn't comfortable with a 4.7. And as I started at the beginning of the day, these are numbers that affect real people. The insurance is a major problem, which we can't control, right? We have zero control over that. Legislature has control over it. So, or maybe even that, not the private sector. But I have to think about holistically, what do our what can they bear? And what I've talked to people is they certainly can't bear 4.7. 2.6 is a lot in a year where we've got a solid waste increase. We had to do the public safety because in the long run, if we didn't do the retention, it was going to cost us more. So I have no second thoughts about what we have done with public safety. I think we're going to have to somehow get this under 2%.
And what's your suggestion on how to?
And we did this last year. I think it's a terrible strategy. I don't want to eviscerate we might have to defer things, though. I certainly don't think that it is a complete CIP hack, but I think staff needs to go, and if it goes 3-2 today, they need to come back and present any other options they have on the table, if they have any, and if they're small, and hopefully we can get below 2%. But I'd like to see an effort to try to get us there, because this is not going to be acceptable to the public. And I'm telling you, all in the name of affordable housing we've been talking about all year, this is going to put people out of their homes. Fixed income seniors, they can't bear all of the increases, and that's not all up to us. I'm just saying it's going to happen. They cannot bear the increases. So we're going to start to have foreclosures. They're going to be out of their house, and bring that to a completely different conversation on affordable housing.
So where's .7 bring us?
Another 2 million.
2 million. Where
do it
do
right
you
now.
want to go?
Mr. Donaldson, do you have any suggestions on 2 million? Because
So we go into CIP and look at I think the first thing to look at would be the CIP and especially the projects where we've added funds.
Bring it up on the screen if you could.
Yep.
I don't know how to do this. You know.
That screen. So
It's dark. Can you make it?
Yeah.
okay, so before we get started, I just show that the areas, this table lists the department, the particular
Straight,
project.
Make
And-
it
and-
straight if you could.
Yes. And then the far right column is the actual increase. So some of these already had an existing revenue. So the first place is what we already looked at before. So the $1 million for timer powers is listed there. So that's no longer an item to be considered. And so all these numbers on the right represent potentials to eliminate projects that we added during the CIP process. And I'm just going to pull it up real quick. As you can see, like library has a very small amount. Things that fall under like fire rescue would not affect the general fund. So that 505,000, while you could eliminate it, would not affect the issue that we just talked about.
And you put a dot or a cross out the ones that we've already done?
Yes, I will do that. So
Please.
then public buildings is the other significant area. And if Sean is still in the room, as we get into some of those, we can talk about that. But that's, so Stephanie is going to go through and just cross out the ones that are already gone. It takes a village.
Sheriff Farb was 620, countywide HVAC was 100, countywide building envelope was 100.
You'd probably have to,
Amount.
no, they
No.
can't see what you're doing because,
No.
Oh, I see.
yes, we'll have to go back in, so.
We have the sheet?
No.
We have the sheet in our book? No.
I'm sorry?
Do we
So
have?
we could, if you want to take a quick break, I could make copies of this so you could each, you want to?
No.
Okay.
Another break?
Yeah, we can, I don't think we need a break.
Yeah, I don't think we need a break either. Just cross them out.
Yeah, just
Okay.
eliminate them.
And so those are the three principal areas where we added new ad valorem, and so out of that,
And then we replace 2.1, remember? So that's the difference.
Jennifer, keep moving
That
the
will have to
page
be
down so
somewhere
that we
else
can
in the
see what's on the bottom half of the sheet.
Okay, the bottom half, it doesn't, those aren't.
Oh, those aren't,
areas that we
Non-
cut.
those aren't general fund?
Non-general fund.
Okay.
No, they're not.
All right, so zoom it in again if you could, please, and go back to the top so we can see what's gone. And
So you have the,
but you got to move them over so we can see what they are.
here, let me,
is it?
here, I'll try to control the mouse here. So, so items that have remained available would be park, boat ramp renovations, any Riverside Park, Wojciech Park at 850. We're looking for a total of 2 million out of this, correct?
2 million.
And then the FARB, which we've already reminded is 250, so there's only $500,000 left there. And so and then Phipps Park FARB is at 150. Equipment countywide golf subsidies is only at 42. So,
No 2 million there. The best you could squeeze out is a couple 100,000. And then scroll down again.
and then we'll move it up to public buildings. So the countywide building envelope FARB and the countywide HVAC FARB are both new identified by General Services. They're now at 400,000 each. And so I would suggest that we want to keep at least half of those at 250 each. The generator FARB,
All right, so can you start a tally somewhere, or we will then, so. Now, again, this is not ideal, but this is what we're working on. So the first one is an HVAC FARB. You said an additional 250?
no, I'd say it would be additional 150 each, so.
Oh, you mean,
they would-
oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. So, so that's the HVAC FARB and the countywide building envelope FARB? Okay, the envelope and the HVAC. So an additional 300K.
Right.
$1.7 left. Commissioner Hurd?
Yeah, I'm not interested in decimating the county budget any longer, so we can stop this nonsense, but I'm really tired of people racking up a bill and then refusing to pay for it.
What else do we have? What other CIPs that are not public buildings or parks?
We can stop.
She's going to vote.
I'm yelling uncle.
Thank you, Commissioner. So you will support the
Yep.
budget as submitted, or as where we are? Thank you.
Thank you.
If we can have a new, fresh motion.
You put that back up for me, the one that has the language in it, Stephanie, or Dawn, whichever. That one. So I would move the total millage countywide MSTU, including, total millage countywide and MSTU excluding Commission District MSTUs and special districts of 2.649%.
Second.
Thank you. Can I ask a question, Ms. Manning? Have you reviewed incremental fund balance dollars? And normally we get a rebate or a big check from the tax collector. I don't remember her coming forward this year. Did we get that money already?
No, we usually don't get that until at the end of September.
Okay, but I mean, the incremental fund balance and money from the tax collector, wouldn't that sort of put us in the neighborhood of some of these numbers that we would need?
No, because I already estimated what she would probably return to us, and
So that's
usually,
part of your numbers?
Yes,
then?
yes.
And the incremental fund balance?
Right, yes.
Okay, so those are not two rocks that had not been
right, yes. I didn't estimate any more than I had budgeted because I already increased it over what she
That was the
estimated.
orange that we squeezed earlier.
Okay, I just wanted to ask the questions so that we make sure that we're reviewing everything that we can be reviewing.
So just for clarity, that was included in the 5 point, the original reduction earlier?
Yes.
That was at 2.180, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so to clarify, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith for the acceptance of a total millage countywide and MSTU, excluding Commission District MSTUs and special districts, and the increase is 2.649%. It was seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
The motion carries 4-1, with Commissioner Heatherington dissenting. What else do you need us to do now? Or is that it?
That is it for now. Thank you very much, Commissioners, and I'd like to also thank my staff. They worked very diligently at this document.
I would like to echo your comments for all staff, all Martin County staff. Our residents can be proud and reassured that our staff is delivering the level of services that we require and expect at the most reasonable price possible. Our next budget hearing is Tuesday, September 12th at 5:05, and then again Tuesday, September 26th at 5:05. Our next commission meeting is August 8th, which we will also be hearing from representatives of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, which will give us an update and sort of an explanation of how the Senate Bill 102 or Live Local law will affect us as a community. And I would now take 5:05 public comment. If anyone from the public is looking to address us, now would be the time. Seeing none. If any of the commissioners have any comments, we won't be meeting again until August 8th. Seeing none. That is the end of our meeting. Thank you very much.